Hello everyone, I'm Amanda Salinas. Thank you for watching this CrimeWatch YouTube exclusive where we're taking a look at some of the most talked about crime stories this week around Texas. We begin with new information about what may have led to a double murder in Marble Falls. Police say a man shot his ex-girlfriend and her brother and are calling the case a domestic violence situation. Experts say these types of homicides are on the rise. Fox 7 Austin's John Krinjak spoke to neighbors who told us they saw concerning signs over the years that may have pointed to an abusive relationship between William Madden Rutland and Teresa McDowell.
She was very nice. And like I say, she didn't socialize much because from what I could sense, she was fearful of this man.
That's how one neighbor on Pecan Drive in Marble Falls describes the dynamic between Teresa McDowell and her ex-boyfriend, William Rutland.
The neighbors all knew that there was something there, you know, that problems between their relationship. I think she was trying to get away from him.
But she wasn't able to.
It was Teresa who called 911. During the phone call, the victim stated that the suspect had produced a firearm and was pointing it at her.
By the time police got there, they say Rutland had already pulled the trigger, fatally shooting McDowell along with her brother John. Rutland was arrested and charged with capital murder in what police are calling a case of domestic violence.
I believe alcohol played a factor in it. I don't know any backstory right now as to the history and how a relationship came about or fell apart.
This neighbor who didn't want to be identified providing some insight, recalling a time he ran into the then couple at a gas station.
They pulled up to get gas, and the next thing I know, he's arguing with her very bitterly and throws the gas nozzle on the ground and walks off and disappears into the dark.
Despite their breakup, Rutland was apparently still living at the home part-time, and his 25-year rap sheet includes multiple convictions for assault causing bodily injury, family violence.
Women and children are at great risk from gun violence by abusers who may not be married to the woman, may not be living with them, but are harassing and threatening them with guns.
According to the Texas Council on Family Violence, these kinds of murders have nearly doubled in the past 10 years.
People will say, well, why doesn't she just leave? She should just leave, it's so simple. But what we know is that when a survivor tries to leave, that's the single most dangerous time. And when there's guns in the mix, then that's even more lethal.
Advocates urge women and men who've been the victim of domestic violence or are in an abusive relationship to reach out for help before it's too late. Information on resources can be found in this story's link below this video. As for Rutland, he's being held in the Burnett County Jail on a $1 million bond. Well, you may have seen the shocking video of a man in a wheelchair who was run over by a truck in a parking lot. Austin police arrested the teenage driver, and now the victim is sharing his story. Fox 7 Austin's Amanda Ruiz tells us what he had to say.
Caught on camera, a man in an electric wheelchair hit by a truck in an empty parking lot.
Más de ahí ya no recuerdo nada.
Who says he can't remember a single thing from that day.
Que soy un bendecido de Dios.
He says he knows he is blessed by God to still be here, but he is hurting tremendously.
Fue en la cabeza, en la espalda raspada, en las manos.
Rogelio sustained a list of injuries, lacerations to his head and face, a cracked skull, a brain bleed, and a fractured pelvis. Pain that has had him feeling out of it even 2 weeks later.
Muy mal físicamente.
Rogelio says he moves through that parking lot off North Lamar Boulevard every morning to get to work. The day of the accident, Rogelio was doing just that. What happens next, he doesn't remember, but it was caught on a nearby security camera. Rogelio can be seen moving until he gets to the part of the parking lot where cars are not designated to move through. He begins to make hand gestures to something off camera when a truck appears on screen and hits him.
Y una vez desperté en el hospital y igual me iban a coser la cabeza porque la traía abierta. También que no hiciera nada porque no traía dinero.
Next thing he knows, Rogelio is waking up in the hospital being told his head had to be sewn up. He knows he is lucky to be alive.
Porque me dio la oportunidad de seguir aquí, estar con ustedes, y sé que tengo una función que hacer en este mundo.
He says he knows God has a bigger plan for him, and that's why he's here after such a horrific accident. Austin police have arrested 17-year-old Pablo Antonio Avila Benegas, saying he was the one who hit Rogelio and fled. Rogelio says he knows people think the teen might have done it on purpose, and he doesn't know if he did, but he wishes no ill will on the suspect. He just hopes he will learn a lesson from this. As for Rogelio, he will continue to live his life with no fear, even after what he experienced.
No, no es miedo. Lo que pasa es que ahorita no tengo fuerzas para andar.
Amanda Ruiz, Fox 7 Austin News.
Austin police say a woman was dragged from her home after thieves watched her withdraw cash from an ATM, followed her home, and took that cash. The crime is called jugging. Fox 7 Austin's Carissa Lemke tells us why police are putting out a warning.
Friday in broad daylight.
The victim during the assault was thrown to the ground and dragged across pavement.
A woman was followed home after taking out money from this Wells Fargo in North Austin and attacked.
This jugging is different than some of the ones we've had earlier this year in that it is a higher level of violence.
Austin police shared these photos of the suspect's car, a gray BMW, and photos of one of the suspects involved in what's called jugging.
So you go to a bank, you conduct business, you're followed, and then you're assaulted, or you lock your car and go to another business after the bank errand and your car is broken into.
Austin has now seen 82 jugging incidents in 2022. In total this year, an estimated $590,000 has been stolen in these cases.
One of the biggest trends that stands out is a lot of the times the victims are chosen purposefully.
According to Detective Judd, often women, the elderly, and people with smaller stature, most occurring at large banks like Bank of America or Chase. Some of the biggest pieces of advice: if you need to withdraw cash, pay attention to people that appear to be lingering around a bank, and lock your doors as soon as you get into your car.
First and foremost, always be aware of your surroundings.
A former detective with the Travis County Sheriff's Office has accepted a plea deal. Stephen Broderick pleaded guilty on September 13th to murdering his estranged wife, her daughter, and the girl's boyfriend. Instead of facing the death penalty, Broderick will now spend life in prison. In exchange for that guilty plea, the charges he was facing for sexually and physically abusing his adopted teenage daughter were also dropped. Prior to her murder, Broderick's wife Amanda filed for divorce after her daughter Alyssa told her what Broderick had been doing to her. Both women had protective orders against him. Still, he was able to bond out of jail and his ankle monitor was removed. Broderick killed them and Alyssa's boyfriend Willie Simmons during a supervised custody visit scheduled for the young son he and Amanda shared. The victim's family believes the abuse charges should not have been dropped. They held a silent protest outside the courthouse ahead of the hearing.
Her voice cost her life, but it will save other victims from you, and you will never touch another young girl again, not where you're going.
As part of the plea deal, Broderick, who led authorities on a 20-hour manhunt after the killings, also waived his right to an appeal. Police are still searching for a man who tried to rob 3 people in a gym parking lot in East Austin. They say the suspect pointed a gun at the victims before leaving the scene in a stolen vehicle. Fox 7 Austin's Amanda Ruiz shows us a surveillance video.
We get robberies around the clock here in Austin.
Robberies are happening more and more in Austin. The Austin Police Department urges the public to be more aware.
Observation, being situationally aware, wherever you are in the community is always a thing to help prevent violent crime.
According to APD, the city of Austin had 1,009 robberies in 2021. Now in 2022, Austin has already seen 658 reported robberies so far.
Certainly robberies are definitely a common in Austin, unfortunately. We see a lot of robberies that occur as someone's getting in or out of their vehicle in a public space or even a private space.
Austin police are still looking for a suspect involved in an aggravated robbery that happened at this Planet Fitness on South Pleasant Valley Road. The incident was caught on surveillance video just before 6:30 a.m. back in May. In the video, you can see the suspect dressed in all black run over to approach two victims sitting in their car. The suspect attempts to open the driver's side door. The driver immediately backs out and pulls away from the suspect, who then fires a single shot at the car. The suspect then runs over to another victim in another car. The victim runs off and the suspect flees the scene in the victim's car. Police are now looking for the suspect, whose vehicle is said to be a black four-door Ford Crown Victoria.
If you are being robbed, tips to our community is survive the encounter any way you possibly can. If you can defend yourself, then defend yourself. If not, and it's easier to just get away from the person, avoid it, run from them, or if you have to capitulate and give them something that they're asking for.
Amanda Ruiz, Fox 7 Austin News.
Law enforcement officers routinely respond to DWI crashes. Well, this week they became victims of these drivers. The crashes have now renewed talks about the Austin Police Department's now defunct DWI unit. Fox 7 Austin's Shannon Ryan has the story.
Traffic enforcement is one of the three most dangerous things that law enforcement officers do to start with, because of the recklessness, the carelessness, the intoxication levels of drivers out there.
That danger all too real for Central Texas law enforcement this week. A Caldwell County constable working a lane closure in North Austin was hit and injured by a suspected drunk driver Saturday. Then early Wednesday morning, Austin police were involved in a crash with another suspected drunk driver.
It's heartbreaking because, folks are getting hurt and they're dying. And it's unnecessary.
Thomas Villarreal, Austin Police Association president, says it's unnecessary, not just because drunk driving is a choice.
Yeah, if you're going to drink, make a plan, make a sober plan.
But because the Austin Police Department's DWI unit was suspended last June.
There's, in essence, no proactive policing taking place in Austin anymore. They're just running from crisis to crisis to crisis.
It's too soon to quantify the impact this has had on DWI crashes in the city, which had been trending downward for the past 5 years. Anecdotally, law enforcement believes they're up.
There is, in fact, a nexus between enforcement, compliance, and public safety. If you have no enforcement, you're going to wind up with no compliance or a lot less compliance, and therefore public safety suffers.
Shannon Ryan, Fox 7 Austin News.
Now we head to Uvalde, where Governor Greg Abbott recently issued orders for a special deployment of state troopers. And that order was in response to a gang-related shooting that happened 2 miles from Robb Elementary School, the site of a deadly mass shooting in May. Fox 7 Austin's Rudy Koski has reaction to the shooting and the state's response.
The shooting Thursday night at this Uvalde park started as a fight between rival gangs, according to authorities.
I know this has been, from talking to my officers, this has been an ongoing deal for the last 6 or 7 months here, tit and tat with each other.
Uvalde Mayor Don McLaughlin promised a crackdown.
If you're a gang member in our community, get ready, because you're going to meet law enforcement, whether it be state, federal, or local. We're going to know who you are, and you're going to know who we are.
That crackdown is coming after an order issued Thursday by Governor Greg Abbott. In a statement, he said, "I have directed the Department of Public Safety to conduct patrol operations in the gang hotspots, send an additional 6 DPS trooper units to work around the clock, and begin coordinating an anti-gang effort with the city." Working with the Uvalde Police Department and Uvalde County Sheriff's Office, DPS is also deploying special agents to target the 5 gangs operating in Uvalde.
You have a governor who has your back.
Friday morning, while in Austin recognizing first responders, Governor Greg Abbott did not mention the shooting in Uvalde, but State Senator Brian Birdwell, who was also at the ceremony, did.
It's one thing to have, gang activity, criminal activity, but to choose to do so in Uvalde is almost as if it's spitting in the face of the people of Texas and saying, here we are, what are you going to do about it?
Birdwell chairs the Senate Border Security Committee.
I just wish we had as many troopers as we needed for every school and every district in the state.
Democrat gubernatorial challenger Beto O'Rourke also weighed in with this social media post. He said, "We don't have to accept this as our reality. The 21 families in Uvalde have told us how to reduce gun violence, but we need a governor who will follow their lead."
There has to be an answer.
State Representative Armando Wally said that Friday after honoring a friend who was killed in the line of duty. The Houston Democrat, who has family from Uvalde, believes some type of gun reform is part of the answer. He also understands that will be a difficult debate in the upcoming session. As for the governor's latest deployment order, he said this.
I would say that's a step in the right direction, but we have to, the trust among members of the Uvalde community and law enforcement, in my view, is broken. That community wants accountability. They deserve accountability. What that looks like, I don't know what it looks like, but they deserve every asset imaginable.
I know the trust is not there, but we will be there. We will not let this community down again.
As for moving forward, several Democrats still want the governor to call a special session. But political analysts warn that the upcoming November election will prevent any meaningful legislation from happening. At the state capitol, I'm Rudy Koski, Fox 7 Austin News.
8 years after a couple and their 2 children were killed in Harris County, an arrest has been made in California. Investigators believe they have caught the man who shot the Sun family in 2014. Fen Liu is charged with capital murder in the cold case. San Francisco police and federal authorities arrested him upon his arrival from China.
Anytime you get a cold case like this, especially multi-murder and especially the murder of 2 young children, you know, that brings a big smile and a sense of relief to you. So this was a pretty big win.
Fen Liu is being held in the San Mateo County Jail while he awaits extradition to Texas. And finally, friends of a 13-year-old girl killed by a suspected intoxicated driver remember her life outside of their middle school. Fox's David Sendentry from our sister station in Dallas has the story.
Friendships we create oftentimes play a role in who we become. For many kids at B.G. Hudson Middle School in Saxe, Brooklyn Moran changed them for better.
She was the sweetest, most kindest person ever. She was the perfect girl.
The 13-year-old was invested in her faith.
She was always at church every Sunday, every Wednesday.
And sports.
Soccer.
Her life, however, was cut short Friday. Moran was traveling along Castle Drive in an SUV with her mother and another teen when Garland police say 30-year-old Jeremy Spencer of Frisco crossed the center median and collided with them. The SUV caught fire. Moran was killed. Her mother and friend taken to a hospital. Police believe Spencer was impaired. He's charged with intoxication manslaughter and more charges.
There are so many other ways you can get home. Call somebody or just stay there until you feel better, but don't drive, because this whole situation could have been completely avoided. That never had to happen.
Friends of Moran gathered at their school Sunday afternoon. They're highlighting her personality.
She always wanted to be the best at everything, and she was the best at everything.
But she also tried to make sure that you were doing the best you could.
Since her faith was so strong, I know she's where she's loved and where she needs to be, and God said it was time for her to come home, so she came home.
Most people are fortunate to find that best friend.
1, 2, 3, Lady Hawks!
Well, it appears Moran was a best friend to many.
Because I couldn't even go 30 minutes without talking to her, and now I am expected to do a lifetime. It's just hard. 1, 2, 3, Lady Hawks!
They're releasing pink balloons into the sky.
It was her favorite color.
A reminder that while her life ended way too soon, her spirit will forever be a part of them.
She was the sweetest kid I ever met, and I'm so glad that she's up in heaven, dancing around over all of us, and she wouldn't want any of us to be sad.
David Sentendry, Fox 4 News.
Thank you for watching this Fox 7 Austin Crime Watch. Our exclusive Crime Watch stories run each Monday on Fox 7 Austin News at 9. Again, to learn more about the stories featured today, look for the links below this video. You can also find more stories on our website, fox7austin.com, or subscribe to the Fox 7 Austin YouTube channel.